Kayley, did you know that there are 330 top prize winners from the various versions of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Isn't that something like $330 million in prize money?
I think so. And I think maybe ironically, that's the same amount of cash that Americans lost to text messaging scams in 2022. That's up from 131 million in 2021.
Do you think those prize winners would mind donating to the funds of the people who lost that money?
We can we can only ask. We can only ask. I wonder if somewhere out there there is a text message, giant text message thread from all the winners from all the different versions, or they keep in touch with each other. Because I mean, at that point, that's 330 people is that's a pretty big graduating high school class, right? If you thought about it in that terms.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Well,
some sort of secret society and they have secret handshakes and stuff.
well, the FTC did put out its report though on text messaging scams, which is what we're drawing some of these numbers from. And I mean, why are these text message phishing or smishing or whatever you want to call them? Why are these scams so effective and why are they growing?
Well, texting is super cheap and easy. And not only that, we can't really ignore the sound of a text message. So they're counting on us immediately looking at our phone and our psychology getting the best of us when they offer us something that's too good to be true or play on our sense of fear.
It's that idea that I have to respond to a text more quickly than I do an email or a letter that I get in the post, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I have an embarrassing number of unread emails in my personal emails, and I'll even if I'm not going to respond to the text immediately, I'll still look at it way sooner than I will an incoming email.
What the FTC puts this report out, are they giving any advice? What kind of advice are they giving about how to avoid these scams?
Basically, don't click any links in text messages or unexpected text messages, and definitely don't respond to them either. Sometimes, if you respond to one of these texts, you'll immediately get a robocall of some sort or a scammer, a live scammer, who can then take the attack further. Um, Additionally, it's good to report anything suspicious, but in this case, suspicious text to reportfraud.ftc.gov or to forward the actual text message itself to 7726, which also spells spam.
And so, I mean, part of where this report comes from is this self-reporting. So, if you're the victim of identity fraud or identity theft or even an attempt, you can go on to the FTC's website and make these reports. And so, part of what when the FTC publishes these numbers, they had said that 22% or more than 1 in 5 of all the reported fraud cases that Americans reported last year named texting as the mode of initial contact. That's up a little bit from last year, but last year was pretty high again. So 22%. What are some of the more common kinds of scams, Kayley?
So, the most common scam, only by a tiny margin, is something called copycat bank fraud. So, basically, that's a text from your bank saying, hey, we've detected something suspicious. Was this you or not? Often that's something that you would reply yes or no to via text. And in this case, this is one of those where you would then receive a call. And that's exactly where people end up losing money because they give social security numbers, passwords, account numbers to these people thinking it's their bank calling them to reactivate their card or whatever it is, and it's a scammer who's just taking that information.
It's you know, whenever I do get an actual alert from either a bank or an insurance company that I do business with, I can't stop myself. When I do call them, I walk them through why I initially thought that their contact was fraudulent. Right. So, I got an email saying, click on this link to verify that it was fraudulent. And, of course, I use another number and I call the insurance company, whoever it is, and I tell them, uh, hey, I'm calling you. Is there a fraud alert? And they say yes. And I say, why did you email me? And why did you embed a link in the email? That's exactly what a fraudster would do. And
Exactly.
then Usually me and the very nice person who has had to deal with that have a little conversation about it. But I try to be constructive, and I know I could be better, Kayley. I know I could be better. Well, folks, I am your host, Jack Clabby, a cybersecurity attorney at Carlton Fields, PA, here in Florida. And with me is my co-host, Kayley Melton. Kayley is the Vice President of U.S. Remote Publishing Teams at KnowBe4. After a short break, we have an outstanding guest today, Lisa Ventura. She's the founder of Cybersecurity Unity and a very good person to know if you wanted to be a millionaire in the late 1990s and early 2000s. We'll be right back with Lisa Ventura.
Welcome to No Password Required, a monthly conversation that introduces you to some of the top talent in the world of cybersecurity.
All right, and welcome back. Our guest today is Lisa Ventura. Lisa, welcome to the No Password Required podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me as a guest today.
So, Lisa, can you give us a breakdown of your career path and how it led you from getting involved in the world of cybersecurity to founding Cybersecurity Unity?
Absolutely. So I spent a number of years in the entertainment industry, working with some high-profile TV and radio presenters in the UK, one of which was Chris Tarrant, who was the host of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Obviously, I know you guys had Regis Philbin for a time as the host of the show there. And I got to see Millionaire go from a format on A4 paper like this, with a working title of Cash Mountain, and the success it had all over the world was phenomenal. But I got to around about 2009, and it was actually my ex-husband who was very high up as a penetration tester, ethical hacker here in the UK. And he used to do a lot of high-profile Ministry of Defence and government work, a lot of which he couldn't tell me a lot about because he'd had to sign the Official Secrets Act over here. But I was always really fascinated with the psychology around hacking and the mind of the hacker and, what drives them apart from the monetary aspect, what drives them to do it. And obviously coming up even then with those new and sophisticated techniques. And my ex-husband founded a company called Titania Limited, which I ended up joining to help him with his workload in terms of operations, recruitment, running the business, etc., so that he could continue coding. And when a few years later we separated and subsequently divorced, I can tell you I was more upset about coming away from the business and cyber than I was about the end of marriage, but that's a whole other story. But I knew that I wanted to stay in cybersecurity, and I did exactly that. So I went to do some cybersecurity awareness training work with BT, and then I worked with a handful of other organizations such as Proficio, Cyborn. I've worked with Pinsent Mason's sisters over here in the UK. I've worked with Boost Technology Group, Logistics UK, the UK Cybersecurity Council, wow. And I now doing some work for an organization called Qualitest. But around all that, I spotted a gap in that there's so much great work over here in the UK being done in the cybersecurity industry. We've got the cyber resilience centres that help small businesses and SMEs with their cyber posture. We've got the National Cybersecurity Centre that does a lot of the technical side of cybersecurity. We have the UK Cybersecurity Council that are working on career pathways into the industry and standards and ethics and chartership for the industry. Then we have the cyber clusters and all the certification bodies like CompTIA and IC Squared and SANS and so on, all doing great work, but they're very siloed. And a lot of people don't know that organization A is working on a particular piece and organization B might be doing something else. And there's no real joined up cohesion or thinking. And that's my aim for Cybersecurity Unity, is to try to go some small way of uniting all these different bodies, these organizations that are doing great work and going, look, when there's no competition, we're all in it for the same thing. We all want to play our part and do something to help combat the growing cyber threats. So let's all get together. Let's all collaborate as an industry and, just talk about what are the key threats, what's going on, what are the challenges, and how can we together and foster that greater collaboration go some small way to coming up with hopefully some small solutions to some of these things. Never going to get over all of it. There are new threats, new attacks, new things coming up practically every second of every day. So there's no way we're going to combat all of it. But I just really want to see that greater cohesion. So I want to create that overarching, I suppose, directory, for want of a word, so that if an organization doesn't perhaps know which facet they need to go for, it's like, well, if you need technical, you go to the National Cybersecurity Centre. If you're after information about career pathways, talk to the council. If you're a small business or SME and you're looking for help with your cyber posture and what you need to do to be more cyber aware, go to one of the your local cyber resilience centre. So a lot of what I'm doing with it will also signpost to the different areas that the organizations need. Then alongside that, I will carry on with the cybersecurity awareness training work that I do. That's something that's really, really passionate to me, is teaching organizations to be a lot more cyber aware. But I've found that the best success with that is to use real world examples that affect the individual. And then that will cascade down into an organization perspective, because I think if you can really capture someone's, I suppose, imagination to stop and think for a minute about, oh my goodness, this really could happen to me. I could potentially have something happen with my online banking or with a lot of my other accounts and so on. If you get people thinking on those real world examples of how it could genuinely really happen to them, I think that will cascade down into an organizational perspective as well. So they'll be thinking a lot more about how they can play their part to be more cyber aware within the organization that they're working for.
Like, it can't just be a list of do's and a list of don'ts. If you're not connecting it to something that could impact them or has impacted them, it makes it a lot harder.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, it may be a cultural difference between the UK and the US, but, or maybe on our side, we're just not as good at uniting the organizations in the public and the private. There's a lot of, in the US, at the federal level and then at the state level, we've got agencies, private side, industry-specific organizations, and they don't collaborate together. And some of it's ignorance, some of it's deliberate. How were you able to get the organizations that you've worked with to the table for the greater good in the UK? Like, how did it? I
think just coming at it from the point of view of, as I said earlier, no competition. We all want the same thing. But I think as well, a lot of organizations might be reticent to do that because they might worry about, confidential information or things that they're working on, getting out and so on. I applied Chatham House rules to every meeting and everything that we do. So whatever's talked about in a meeting or is discussed is absolutely applicable in terms of Chatham House rules. So it just stays where it is. And then we can look to cascade some of that wider work and things that we talk about. For example, I'm currently working on a campaign called Generation Cyber, and that is specifically around trying to capture the imagination of the general public and bring more people into the cybersecurity industry, because I don't know about the US, but certainly here we have a big skills gap issue. So Generation Cyber is all around, making cybersecurity an interesting pathway for a career that people might want to look at, and not just those that are coming out of school, college or university, but career transitioners, people that are perhaps maybe been in the military but be looking for a new career because they've now come out of their military career and are looking for their next step. So it's looking at all those different groups and those bodies. And I think as well, trying to get away from some of the imagery, because I talk to a lot of people about careers in cyber and they'll go, it's a bit off-putting because it just seems to be all, people with hoodies all huddled over their computer and all sort of padlocks and things. So I'm doing a piece of work as well at the moment on trying to get around a lot of that imagery that could be potentially off-putting to people outside of our industry that might want to come in.
Lisa, just for our U.S. listeners, is Chatham House rules, is that what happens at Chatham House stays at Chatham House?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
We call that the Las Vegas principle in the United States. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Is in Vegas.
But that's the key. I mean, that is key, right? If you want to have cross collaboration between competitors, between a regulator and private industry, there has to be some assurance that if I share this information with you, you're not going to turn around and use it against me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if phase one of cybersecurity Unity's mission was, to get the UK stakeholders to work together, it sounds like that's pretty well underway. What would you consider phase two for cybersecurity Unity?
I'd love then to start looking at different bodies and groups on a more global basis and bring them together as well, so that we can start, sharing that collaboration on a lot more sort of global scale and looking at things that might to work, somewhere else and how we can apply, that in different areas and, really foster that collaboration on that much bigger scale as well. I think that's so important.
Are there strategies or impediments that you see that'll work or hurt you in that process?
I think it'll be very much sort of similar to us, but obviously looking at the different cultures and different ways that other countries are doing things, and looking to foster that collaboration through those differences as well, because there may be things that we've not thought of that another organization in another country might be doing that might work really well, and vice versa. So it is all about that collaboration and that cross information sharing for the greater good of protecting the entire globe from the growing cyber threat.
A lot of US entities are particularly cautious about sharing information. We're talking about there's personal information that might be collected in the UK or Europe overseas, and I think that has the ambiguity and the changing rules about what can be shared and what can't be has created a lot of challenge in siloing of information. Now, obviously you can share cyber threat intelligence without sharing personal information. That's perfectly okay to do, but has the separation of the UK from the EU complicated your plans for information sharing, or do you think that it's still an accomplishable mission, even in the new political climate?
I think it's still an accomplishable mission. I'm talking to a lot of EU representatives in the cyber field as well to see how, despite the challenges of Brexit, how we can still collaborate effectively and with cohesion with a lot of the EU member states that currently remain. So I don't think it's within the realms of impossibility. It is going to have its challenges, but hopefully not as bad as I thought it would.
Good. Just to step back a second, we have to ask you a little more about your work on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. How did that opportunity arise? Like, how did you find yourself in a position where you were there to work on that?
So when I was doing my studies, I did English and literary studies, and I knew that I wanted to do some form of writing or journalism or work in the media in some way. And I went to a seminar when I was at the very end of my college studies called Careers in the Media, run by a lovely guy, really well-spoken gentleman called Paul Vaughan. And I just found myself, I just went up to him at the end of the seminar and struck up a conversation. And he said that he had an opening to help his PA as an assistant because she was trying with the workload, and encouraged me to apply, swap details. And I remember typing a CV, actually manually typing.
That's awesome.
On typewriter. So I'm showing my age a little bit now. This is around 1994, 1995, and I'm typing this CV on a typewriter. I mail it in the post. Can you believe that?
That's awesome.
So really, I'm showing my age now. It's just as email was starting to seep into being that little bit more to mainstream around about the mid-90s sort of onwards. But I posted my CV.
It's a secure form. It's a much more secure form of communication than an email.
That is true. That is true.
I got a telephone call asking me to go in for an interview, and I got the job. And 2 days after I started, his PA announced that she was leaving to start a new life in Gibraltar because her husband had been offered a job out there.
Okay.
And she worked a notice. And at the end of that notice, I just assumed, we'll recruit another PA, and that was it. I was actually kind of thrust into that. Now, bear in mind, I'm only about 22 years old, and suddenly I'm managing Paul's diary, Chris's diary, a lot of the other things for a lot of the other presenters. But with Chris, and again, show my age a little bit more, because he used to get a lot of requests in. Can you come on this talk show? Can you do this radio show? Can you do this event? Can you do? And we get faxes, not emails, faxes, paper like that coming in. So there you go. And we just get loads of them. But some of them, I just pick up the phone and I just go, Chris, we've had this come in. Do you want to do Room 101? Or do you want to do Tonight with Trevor McDonald? And this is the fee and things like that. And then I would go back and I would say to them, well, it is Chris and he's really busy and he's not going to be able to do it for any less than. And I come up with this ridiculous figure thinking they're not going to say yes. And they did. And suddenly Chris is busier, earning more. So I ended up getting put in charge of everything that he was doing before Millionaire. And then Millionaire came along and he just went, stratospheric again.
Wow. So it's like saying yes to opportunities and then a little bit of luck, a little bit of saying yes, and then just doing an excellent job.
Yeah. That's or just for, I hate to say it, but I did almost fall into them in that. Yes, I got the opportunity. That was my first job, to be an assistant to his PA to help her with her workload. But after that, I just fell into doing that. Awesome. There's me thinking he's going to recruit somebody else, or somebody else will come along, and that wasn't the case. And I just fell into doing a lot of it. And I
have to say, at least just on a personal note, my older sister was educated in the States, but then got a graduate degree in the UK in English, as if she would be a professor. And then right at the end of that, ended up getting a job opportunity for cable news in the US, and that's her career. Similar sort of thing. She said yes at the end of a seminar and was off to the races. So someone must be recruiting out of English programs in the UK, knowing that they're getting high quality talent. That is very cool. Do you ever have regrets about switching to cybersecurity and wishing you had stayed on that side of things?
No, not at all. Again, it was a thing that kind of I went into, that I fell into, that I didn't really think too much about. It got to a point around about 2009 where I did feel at that point I'd gone as far as I could go with Chris and wanted a new opportunity. And I was looking at other things in the media, but then I could also see how my ex-husband was sinking with his workload. He's trying to still be a penetration tester. He's trying to run this business. He's trying to do everything else around it. He's really sinking. So for better or worse, I took the opportunity to go into the business to help him and develop it that way. And that's my sort of first foray into cybersecurity. I don't regret it one bit, because I've had the most amazing time in this industry since I came into it. Done work that I just couldn't have ever imagined, doing. Really enjoy what I do. And if I can just stop one person or one business from clicking on that link or doing something they shouldn't, I'm happy. That's Lisa, my goal.
Because I know you look at a lot of this from the perspective of psychology of both the attacker and the potential victim. But we talk about on the show a fair amount, the sophistication of the hackers.
Yeah.
What is it like? And the regret sometimes is, if the threat actor applied 50% of the effort and the training necessary to pull off these attacks to a legitimate business, they'd probably be successful.
Absolutely.
Right? Why doesn't that happen?
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely. I wish I could work that one out as well. I agree,
Yeah.
because some of them are just getting so sophisticated. We have one that's doing the rounds here in the UK at the moment, which is actually on WhatsApp, and they will send a WhatsApp message to you, and it'll start off with something like, "Hello, Mum. I've lost my phone and I need some money for a new one. This is my new number. Can you transfer some money?" And so many people who are parents have been caught out by that.
Wow.
Even my own cousin, she was just out one day, doing what she's doing, gets this WhatsApp message, thinks it's her daughter, my cousin, and does transfer some money. She got the money back, but not without a fight from her bank and so on. But in that moment, she's busy. She gets this message of, "I've lost my phone. This is my new number, and I desperately need some money." You're a parent. What are you going to do? You're going to. I got it. I actually got it literally 3 days ago. I looked at it and I thought, nice try, because my only son was stillborn a few years ago. So I'm not a mother. I don't have to. So I'm just like, yeah, nice try. Block. Off you go. Goodbye.
I really love getting in those. I don't know if you have the same thing happening in the UK, but I've experienced getting roped into some very large group suddenly on WhatsApp, and all sorts of random numbers and addresses, and it'll be a message that's something about Bitcoin and like investing, and I'm always trying to add a message after that, like, "Everyone who sees this, they'll delete it in a second, but this is a scam, get out." And they're always like, "Oh, you're gone from the group, bye-bye."
They picked on the wrong user. That's what it's just like, pick anybody else other than you, right? Like, you're going to, it's amazing.
But the other one is CEO fraud. So the emails that will pertain to be from the CEO of the organization you work for, or somebody in authority in that organization. Can you get these vouchers for me, or can you transfer this sum of money for me, and so that. And with the advent, I've noticed with the advent of AI tools like ChatGPT and Bard, it's getting more. One of the bits of advice I will give is look for the spelling, look for the grammar, but they're using these tools now to write a lot of the messages. So it's just one step further all the time.
If you need me, come see me in person. Don't
Right.
text me at the last minute. Well, on this show, Lisa, we talk a lot about diversity, in particular about bringing diversity into the cybersecurity world. There's one type of diversity that we know you have an interest in, that we haven't talked about yet on our program. Can you educate us a little bit about neurodiversity?
Sure.
And talk about how you support those who are neurodiverse?
Yeah. So I myself am neurodivergent. I was diagnosed to start with autism back in 2018, and then subsequently also diagnosed with ADHD and borderline personality traits. Now, they were really clear to state that it wasn't the full-blown borderline personality disorder, but traits, and that those traits came up because I had an upbringing from two very narcissistic parents. So I've been through quite a lot of trauma and so on as a result of that. Now pretty much estranged from my parents, sadly, for that reason, because when I started to set healthy boundaries with them, the treatment towards me escalated in a not very good way. So for me, I know, and I've always known, that I was different, that I didn't fit in. I struggled socially. I had interests that were nowhere near what all my other peers or the people I knew were interested in and into, and I was obsessed. So, for example, I have an absolutely encyclopedic knowledge of the rock band Queen and Freddie Mercury. I am absolutely obsessed with both. I became obsessed with all things to do with nuclear war and the Cold War period of the 50s to the early 90s as a result of seeing a film about nuclear war in the UK that was broadcast in 1984 called Threads. I just have these really weird sort of obsessions to the point of nothing else. So when I got my autism diagnosis, I thought, at last, I understand now, and I understand why I've struggled to fit in and struggled really socially with people, and also why I've been subjected to so much bullying and abuse my entire life from the moment I started school to now, to literally sort of talking to you now. So I get it. I finally understand it. But I felt it wasn't the only thing with me. I felt there was more to it with me, because I have trouble where my concentration will just absolutely go, and I know it frustrates my husband massively when I'll start one job, and it could be really mundane. I might start to load up the dishwasher, and then I've just forgotten I've done it, and I'll walk away and do something else, and there's things still left on the side. I do that all the time, and it feels like my brain has got 1,000,001 tabs open, and they're all competing for my attention. So I had that extra assessment in January, and sure enough, I also have ADHD, as well as these borderline personality traits. And I'm currently waiting to try some medication for the ADHD side of things, although I'm in two minds about trying it in terms of, is it going to change my personality? Is it not going to? I don't want to change sort of too much, because I like the creative aspects, of what in terms of what ADHD brings me. And when I was first diagnosed with autism, I did a lot of research and found that a lot of people that are in cybersecurity may also have neurodiverse conditions. They may also be autistic or have ADHD, or even have dyslexia or dyspraxia or any of these other neurodiverse conditions. But that's actually not a bad thing, because it brings a lot into the cybersecurity industry. We're very well suited because we can spot patterns. We can spot things that somebody else might not necessarily and ordinarily see. We have intense hyper focus, so we're more likely to spot those patterns and things like that. So I think we should try to bring in as many people that are neurodiverse as possible into cybersecurity industry, and that's where I'd focus a lot of my work and awareness raising as well.
I love that. I'm neurodiverse myself, and also got an adult diagnosis of autism and ADHD. So I very much understand and commiserate with all the things you're saying, for sure. And I think, I don't know, I in the old days of cyber, where all of those images came from of guys in hoodies and locked in the basement and things like that, I think that was like the first wave of seeing how great this industry is for people who are neurodiverse, because of course, back then they didn't think that autism affected females as much.
Correct.
Because, it shows up differently for us. But yeah, I think that cyber is really the perfect place for neurodivergent brains, for sure.
Absolutely. And you say as well that it was always thought of that if it affected more males than females. Women are far better at masking their differences and their traits. I used to mask. Also, I would hide my interests. I would try to observe other people to see what they were doing, and then try to do that in terms of fitting into social situations. So I think that masking is very prevalent, far more so with women than with men.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember at a point in college realizing that I was spending more time out in public listening to other people's conversations and like making note of how to make small talk and things like that. And oh wait, most people don't do that.
Yeah.
What can companies that are trying to recruit diverse talent do better to support neurodiverse employees?
I think for me, there's no one size fits all approach, and every single neurodiverse person is different in their needs and what they need to support them, in the workplace. And certainly, I can speak from my own experience. I cannot work in an office. I actually learned that before my diagnosis in 2015 and even before the pandemic hit. And I cannot do 5 days. In fact, I can't even do a day in the office. I cannot cope with the sensory overload of all the noise and the phones ringing and somebody coming up to you every 2 minutes. And, at one time, I remember I put my headphones in and was oh no, get those headphones off, you can't have your headphones on. I'm like, I'm just trying to keep the sound out. I'm not being antisocial. I'm just trying to keep out the sound. And that was when I was at BT. I don't think anything, because obviously back even then, sort of 2013, 2014, there wasn't as much awareness around diversity. So, and I certainly didn't know even then that I was neurodiverse. But I would really struggle with it, and I would get to Friday and I'd get home and I would be beyond exhausted. Yeah. And by the time I got to feeling relatively okay, it was Sunday night, but I'd have to do it all over again the next day for an entire week. And I actually went to working from home when I got my, I've always had dogs, but I got a new dog, and she was more of a challenge when I homed her as a rescue in 2015. So I ended up working from home more to be more on hand because of settling her in, and found I actually was better, much more productive, better in my own space, could have everything the way I wanted, didn't have horrible noise or interruptions or things. So I knew then I can't work in an office, and I've always sought roles or contracts or things that I've been able to work from home but go out to meetings or conferences or events whenever I've needed to do them. So that's a big one for me. So I'd say just talk to those others and listen to what they have to say and what they need. And if they need headphones to be able to concentrate or need to drown out that sound, they're not being antisocial. They're not being anything else other than just being able to focus fully. They need to drown out that sound and have the headphones in. So talk to them and see what their individual needs are.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much. We're going to take a short break now, and when we return, we'll have our lifestyle polygraph. So please stay with us.
You're listening to the No Password Required podcast. We cover cybersecurity and a lot of other stuff.
Welcome back. As many of you know, the Lifestyle Polygraph is a test used by the federal government to determine if a person is worthy of learning some of the nation's most important secrets. Here, we use this technique for slightly lower stakes to determine whether our guest can join our fantasy cybersecurity squad. Lisa, are you ready for the Lifestyle Polygraph?
Absolutely. Bring it on.
Awesome. So, number one, what is the greatest work-related day you've ever experienced?
The day that I received a letter in the post in mid-May this year informing me that I'd been awarded an MBE, which is Member of the British Empire, in the King's Birthday Honours List for services to cybersecurity and diversity and inclusion. I've done so much work. I've won awards in the past as well. For example, I'd won SC Magazine's Outstanding Contribution to Cybersecurity Award in 2019. And I thought, I've got no I didn't go because I thought, I've got absolutely no chance. I'm up against Ian Glover from Crest and Stu Hurst, who was at Just Eat at the time, and really high profile people. I thought, I've got no chance. And I won that award. And when I got that letter, this is a true story. When I got that letter, my first thought was, this is definitely a scam of some sort, because that's what you think. But there's a phone number on the top. So I thought, well, I'll give the number a call and I'll just see. But I'll do that. We have a thing called 141 that'll withhold your number when calling another. So I did that to withhold my number. And it was a very well-spoken lady that answered. And then in that second, I thought, oh my goodness, this actually might be real. And she confirmed it was. And we had a bit of a chat. And she said, you're not the only one to phone to check whether this is genuine or not. When my husband got home from work, I said, look, I've had this letter, but if I tell you, you can't say anything about it until it's the list is published on the 17th of June. And I showed him and he said, you should have known that this wasn't a scam. Just look at the quality of the paper. That's been paid for by taxpayers' money. I said, they'll go to any lengths. You just don't know.
Oh my God.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So is there, outside of being nominated, is there any sort of like ceremony or title or award?
Yeah. I get to have MBE after my name, which I've put on there. And yes, I'm waiting to get a date where I will be invited to either Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle to accept my MBE award from a senior member of the royal family. Could be King Charles, it could be Prince William, or it might be Princess Anne. One thing's for sure, it won't be Prince Harry because you've all got him.
Right. Exactly. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. Congratulations.
No, I can't wait. I still can't believe it now. It's been nearly a month since I was able to announce it, and nearly 2 months since I had the letter, and I still can't believe it, and my imposter syndrome is still through the roof over it. It's meant for somebody else. It was never meant for me. And again, I've done a lot of awareness raising around imposter syndrome, and even co-founded an awareness day around the phenomenon of imposter syndrome, just to raise some awareness and have those conversations so that people know they're not the only ones that are suffering that or going through it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Okay, I think number 1 is a pass for sure. Number 2, if you could live in one of your favorite shows for a week, which one would it be?
Oh gosh, I love sci-fi. I'm a huge sci-fi fan, but if there's one show I would love to live it, and I think it's because of the writing of it, that J. Michael Straczynski, of what he came up with and how it all linked together, and that's Babylon 5. And I know it's a few years old, but I love that show, and the writing and how it was put together, and how you have to watch it from episode 1 because something from that might come into season 4 even or something. It links together so well. He's got such a great ability with his screenwriting, and I would love to live on Babylon 5 and be part of that whole environment.
Or like a common question that at least US-based cyber people talk about a lot is Star Trek versus Star Wars. It's sometimes, the cliche is Star Trek is for the peaceful person trying to get people to cooperate, and Star Wars is for the warlike adventurer, right? So it's sort of like a bizarre. Yeah. I don't think it's a fair assessment, frankly, right? But Babylon 5, I remember when it first came out, like I meant and loved it, and thinking of it now as it was. Deep Space Nine, Star Trek sort of had a similar thing, but it was about diversity and people who were different getting along together and choosing to be, among many other themes. But it does echo with a lot of what we've talked about in terms of, at least let's make our art at least some projection of how we want our society to be like. And we can all get along even if we're dramatically different from one another. And that can be a good thing.
Yeah. Jack, I didn't know you were a bit of a Trekkie.
I've gotten better with time, and I do like Star Wars, but Star Trek, it starts from a place of scarcity has been eliminated, right? Which is such a neat thing to aspire to. Like we have abundance now and we can share it. We don't need to fight with each other anymore. And when we engage in fiction and like we're trying to read, I don't always want to hear about like post-apocalyptic stuff or war. I want to think, well, I'd like to move towards a society where we all got along with each other and didn't need to fight all the time, right? Like, let's at least fantasize about that existing.
Right.
No, I get that. I love Star Trek and Star Wars, but I must confess I do like a lot of those old dystopian films from years ago. Charlton Heston, Soylent Green. I remember I had my Facebook banner as the Soylent Green sort of poster because it was 2022. It was the year of Soylent Green. It's just
Yes.
Yeah, it's an awesome. That's a great point. It's like, well, where are we going next? This is where I guess we're going. You're right, because we've also got to predict the worst case scenario, and so we can see the signs of it. But when you start to see the signs of it, then there's a little bit of panic.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
When we ran out of toilet paper in the United States at the beginning of the pandemic, I think people were thinking, "What are we going to do?"
We had exactly the same. I'd never seen anything like it in the supermarkets here. They were just clearing the shelves of it, and fighting over it like droves. And I just thought, I just can't believe we've come to this.
Right. And if I had tried to predict what it would be that flew off the shelves and caused fights during a pandemic, toilet paper would not have even been in the top 5.
No, exactly. Right. I was ordering stuff like from foreign countries that was like coming in giant roll. And then, it all subsided pretty early and we were stuck with this. I remember at one point it was like a wheel of cheese you'd see in just a giant Russian toilet paper roll or something like that. It was before. And I think at one point we were looking at it as a family and we were like, we need to find someone whose house we want a toilet paper. Like no one's going to use this, right? This is poor quality Russian toilet paper, wherever it came from. I think we still have it. I think it's like our backup toilet paper. It's probably 3 or 4 years old. So maybe I'll bring it on next episode. So we can all see how big it's gotten over time.
You're going to have that for the rest of your life.
That's right. It's going to be, you're going to decorate my casket with it. That's the plan.
All right. Number 3. Over the past few years, Ted Lasso has been the American window into British culture. At one point, the show referenced American candy, something we call candy. If you are having a stressful day and need something sweet, what kind of candy do you reach for?
Anything that has salted caramel in it. I am absolutely addicted to, and I will literally, if I see when I'm shopping something that's come out that's new, but it's salted caramel related or flavor, in the trolley it goes. I will try anything that's to do with salted caramel. It could be. Go on.
Are you a soft caramel or like a hard caramel?
No, it's soft.
Soft.
Okay. Definitely soft. But salted. It's got to be the salted caramel. I swear I don't even go for or like much of normal caramel. Now, if it's not salted caramel, I don't want to know.
There's something about the saltiness and the sweet that's just, ugh.
And when I first... Sorry, go on. I was going to say, when I first heard about it, I thought, oh, that is going to be not nice at all until I tried it. And I was like, oh, that's it. I'm done now. No other caramel will do.
How do you feel about Werther's caramel? Are you okay with that? Or that's like the hard caramel that comes in a little packaging. Do you like that at all?
Not especially. No, I'm not a... We do get that over here. I think I've tried it once or twice, but generally the adverts over here tend to associate it with your grandparents that will have it and then give the grandchildren and stuff. So I think that's probably why I've shied away from it a bit.
And it's like one of those things where the first time you see it, you think it's going to be soft, and then it becomes hard.
It's not.
You're just so angry, and I remember, every time that happens, I think, why am I so angry about this? I need to not be so. I want to feel less about this. I don't know why I'm so upset. But soft caramel beats hard caramel. I don't know why when they invented the soft caramel, people continued making hard caramels. It doesn't make sense to me. All right. I'm glad we're in alignment on that, everybody.
So, number 4, what was your favorite toy when you were a kid?
Scalextric, which you guys know as slot cars. When when I was about 5, my dad used to work as a mechanical engineer at the factory, and they used to have this thing where they'd have like a pop-up toy shop thing on the factory site for the workers to get toys for the kids and so on. And he came home with a Scale Electric, and I absolutely loved it. And it sparked off a huge interest in cars and Formula One racing that I still have to this day. But I do wonder if he actually got the Scale Electric thinking it was going to be for himself, and that I probably wouldn't be interested in it and go for a doll or something. But no. Once that Scale Electric was out, that's it. And I've got one now. My husband bought us one. It's Back to the Future versus Kit Car. And
Oh,
we've
that's
got it.
amazing. What?
You do.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So it's got a little kit car and a little Back to the Future car, and they're racing around the Scale Electrics, because we have a retro room, and this room is our pride and joy. And my husband actually scoured eBay to find all the old machines that we used to have in our youth when we were growing up. So we've got like the Commodore 64s, we've got all the Amigas, we've got the Spectrum, we've got an old Apple Mac, we've got all these machines. And he also managed to find on eBay my first computer that got me into using computers when I was 8, which is the Texas Instruments TI-499, where I would play Space Invaders and what they called Munchman, which was actually their version of Pac-Man. And I'll go in and I'll switch it on and I'll go in and play them sometimes.
That's amazing.
That's
So cool.
That's incredible. And they function, or you guys get them?
Oh,
to
they
work?
function.
Wow.
Yeah. No,
Wow.
they all work. I think he did some refurbishment work on a few of them, but no, they all turn on. They all work, and you can still play games on them and do coding and all sorts of stuff on them.
Wow. Wow. Can I ask, who is generally faster? Is it the DeLorean or is it Kit in the racing? Is there between the two of them?
It's usually the DeLorean if they don't sort of crash or something like that when I'm doing it. I have to try and be careful to get them around the corners.
That's awesome.
All right, final question.
Mhm.
You enjoy 1980s soap operas.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, who doesn't? Amazing. Big hair, the drama, the filters on the frames. Where did this love come from, and what are your favorites?
Definitely Dallas. Where it came from, I'm not sure. I guess it was just something that we watched in our house. Each week it used to be at 9:00 on a Thursday here in the UK, and Dallas definitely is my all-time favorite one. I love Larry Hagman and how he played J.R. Ewing. And what I love so much about it is just when you think that character J.R. Ewing could not stoop any lower, then he does. He just played it so well. But I then got into Dynasty and Knots Landing and Falcon Crest. That's probably my next favorite, actually, Falcon Crest. I absolutely loved all of those, and watched the Dallas reboot when they brought it back about 10 years ago. So I think it came back, and watched all of that. And I was really gutted when they only did 3 seasons and finished it. But funny enough, my husband's the same. He loves Dallas as much as I do. So we have watched it from episode 1 right all the way through to the end.
Awesome.
And we do want to make a trip to the States, specifically to Dallas, to go to see South Fork Ranch, because I think you can still do that. So that's on our bucket list.
What is it about it? I mean, because it's so different from your day job, right?
Yeah.
What is it about it that makes it attractive to you? Like that?
I say it's just the characters and what they do to each other. And I say JR in particular, he's just such a, excuse the terminology, but he's just such a badass in just what he does and the way he treats people and stuff. And yeah, just hooked on it.
There's like generations of people in Texas who don't see it at a remove, but see it as sort of the template for how you're supposed to act. True. I mean, like, I think people take it unironically, but it is such a Lisa, I agree with you that the acting, it's hard to do, and it's so good, particularly, and they're doing it, it's a lot of content they're putting out too.
It's
Incredible.
And I think I like the dynamic with the evil JR, but you had Bobby, who was the conscience, the good one, the one that was always pulling him up whenever he done a bad deal or was going to do something that he shouldn't or whatever. And I really, really like that dynamic with the two of them. I met Patrick Duffy as well. He came to Worcester Cathedral, where I live in the UK, to do a talk. And I actually went up and met him after I got a photo with Patrick Duffy,
that's awesome.
which is one of my prized, things.
Because I think when they rebooted it and they undid, spoiler alert, right, when they undid the death and he's coming out of the shower, I think in that one scene, that's like iconic. The Patrick Duffy is still around kind of thing, and it was a dream. That's amazing. What a great photo to have, and experience and memory to have. Well, Lisa, I think, Kayley, what do you think? I think Lisa passed and can join our fantasy cybersecurity team.
Oh, absolutely.
Yay!
Absolutely.
Well, Lisa, thank you for joining us. If our listeners want to connect with you, maybe on social media or on a website, how can they do that?
Absolutely. So my website is lisaventura.co.uk, or you can reach me via the Cybersecurity Unity one as well, which is csu.org.uk. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, or even Threads now, all these major platforms. And you can find me as Cyber Geek Girl, which is my call sign, Cyber Geek Girl.
Well, that brings us to the end of the show. But first, Kayley, what did you learn today?
Today, I learned that even amazingly inspirational and successful people, even those nominated to the Order of the British Empire, still experience imposter syndrome. And that just makes me feel a lot better.
And I learned too from her lessons uniting public and private entities and companies in the UK that, the recipe is the same for what has been successful in pockets here in the US. It's, emphasizing that we're not competing to stop cyber threats. We're not competing, right? We can all do this together. And two, that combination of we're going to do this in confidence with one another, and we're going to try to create an environment of non-competition or non-enforcement when we share information with government entities, is the recipe that works, at least until we find a better one. So for the entire No Password Required team, I want to first say thank you to Serena Gandy, who is the co-host of the Do We Belong Here podcast, for helping us out today with production. And also want to thank you for listening, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you for listening to the No Password Required podcast. You can find us on social media at No Password Pod. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the No Password Required podcast. And if you know someone who might like it, please share it with them. The show is produced by Cyber Florida. And a special thank you goes out to our friends at Carlton Fields. If you'd like to learn more, visit our website, cyberflorida.org/pod. All opinions expressed by the No Password Required podcast participants are their own and do not exclusively represent the views and opinions of Cyber Florida.